We will now review how Kanbans facilitate inventory control in production. Kanban systems allow control of the work in progress as standard containers hold specific amounts, and as only one container full is produced or moved at a time. Now, as we said, there's a production or movement only as authorized by the Kanban, which means there can never be more inventory between two resources than what has been authorized by the Kanban cards. The upstream resource can only produce when it receives a Kanban, and production is stopped when that amount is produced. So we limit the inventory by the number of containers allowed. But this also allows us to fine-tune our process. A specific number of containers in Kanban is used, so you can start with a larger number of Kanbans and then reduce them until you hit a stockout, for example. So we're reducing our inventory, our waste in our system, until we uncover a problem. And this means that Kanbans can be used to fine-tune our system in a very simple way that everyone can understand, and stocks cannot accumulate. Now, there are some key Kanban rules, and you may see some variations on this, but ours here are never pass defective parts onto the next workstation. So, quality at the source. The receiving process withdraws from the sending process. The sending process never delivers to the receiving process. No push. The quantity of the parts produced always equals the quantity of parts withdrawn and is marked on the Kanban card. So again, this idea of control via the containers and the Kanbans. Parts can never be produced or moved without a Kanban card. Again, pull, authorization. The Kanban cards are actually attached to the parts or boxes containing the parts, and the number of parts in a container always matches the number on the Kanban card. So again, this might not be exactly the rules that fit exactly to your Kanban system, but we're re-emphasizing the important role of the Kanban to control the material flow according to pull and to control the inventory in the process. Now, of course, today there are electronic Kanbans or e-Kanbans, and this is an example from SAP. So here we show a Kanban board of a demand source. So for example, an assembly line. And the assembly line was requiring several different input materials, which you see over here. And each of these input materials has one or more containers, as shown here on the Kanban board. You have 3 different containers for this material, 2 for this. And now the color of the container represents the status. So when a container is empty, the operator will set that particular color to red. So here we have an empty container. If the color is, the material arrives at the line and the container fills up, then you see the color is in green and we have the status of full. Other colors could show other statuses, such as that the material is in transit or being filled, or if maybe a container has an error. So finally, pull and JIT is all very well within our own production. But parts and raw materials come from outside suppliers, and lean does not mean to remove the waste of inventory from the organization and push it onto the supplier. This may be, your short-term solution, but the supply chain as a whole doesn't benefit the supply chain as a whole. You're just moving stocks from one point to another. So the traditional view of suppliers, now fairly old-fashioned, is that many suppliers compete mostly on cost, and there's no win-win situation. The producer tries to make as much profit as possible by buying at a low price and can only benefit at the expense of the supplier and vice versa. This causes friction, lack of cooperation, discourages information sharing. One side is going to win, the other side will lose. Now, in the JIT approach to suppliers, this depends entirely on cooperation with the suppliers, identifying the best suppliers, always ordering for them, creating a stable system then which allows the supplier to specialize, which then will improve quality and help them lower costs. You want to build trust with the supplier so you can share information without the threat of having any type of trading advantage. And of course, we could use the Kanban system. Kanbans could be sent to the supplier so that you put in place your pull JIT system, but the supplier may have multiple customers, so you need to find a compromise. Now, one of my students was doing exactly this. He was working as a lean manager for Bosch here in Bavaria with the task to work with the suppliers in the region to do exactly this, bring the JIT into their production. Now, obviously, this is just a one-slide overview. This cannot do justice to this topic, but this is a hugely important topic if you want to realize true JIT at your production.